Franchisee helps corporate executives and entrepreneurs build generational wealth, diversify their portfolios, or make a smart career pivot through honest, no-pressure franchise consulting. With 20-plus years of real-world experience as franchise owners, operators, and franchisors, the Franchisee team knows what works and what doesn't. They don't sell franchises, they guide people to the right fit or steer them away if it's not. Learn more at franchisee.com. That's FRANOCITY.com.
Here's what's next on the Nice Guys on Business.
Any good franchisor is going to let you color outside the lines a little bit. You're going to be able to innovate and try new things. That's where the best ideas come from that spur the systems. But franchising, for so many of them, here you've got product market fit that's been established in other markets. You've got the playbook, you've got a coach on the sidelines supporting you and their team. But here's one of the things that oftentimes gets overlooked. You've got a community of other owners all operating the same system. Think about when you built your first business. It was lonely at times, and now you've got a community of others running the same thing, exchanging best practices. And I'll say it up front here, franchising is like every other industry in that you have really strong players, and then you have some that are not as strong, that don't provide the value to the franchisees. And that's where we come in to try to help our clients identify the right ones.
You don't need to see their identification. These aren't the podcasters you're looking for. These are the Nice Guys on Business. Go from where you are now to where you could be. Get expert tips to grow your business, to be more productive and more efficient, whether you're trying to build influence, grow your community, or make it rain. Best-selling author of Nice Guys Finish First, Doug Sandler, can lead the way. The Nice Guys on Business is produced by Turnkey Podcast Productions. Now, here's your host, Doug Sandler.
All right, nice guy community. If you've ever thought about owning a business but didn't want to start from scratch, franchising might be the move. And today's guest, Jon Ostenson, he's the guy to talk to. He's the founder of FranBridge Consulting, one of the top franchise consultants in the country, and he's helped thousands explore franchise ownership as a smart path to freedom and wealth. Now, Jon's been on both sides. He's a multi-brand franchisee himself and used 200 location system to build President of ShelfGenie. Is that right? 200 locations? I mean, that's huge, Jon. That's really cool. Before that, he spent years in the corporate world, including leading a $350 million in sales at Carter, so he knows how to build and scale. If you've ever wondered about how to get into business for yourself, but not by yourself, Jon's got the answers. Let's dive in. Jon, welcome to the Nice Guys on Business podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Doug. Excited to be here.
I became I was like fanboying on all of the different appearances that you've had on all of these podcasts, and I clued in on one specifically. And I'm really curious, how, when you started this process of thinking about, hey, I'm going to get into the franchise business, was that because of some lessons that you learned early on in your life, or was that something that you just discovered as this is a faster path to profit as an adult? What's your story when it comes to that?
Yeah, I'd say, was fortunate to be raised by two great parents, and they provided for us, but the conversations around money in our household were really from a scarce mindset. And I always said someday when I grow up and, I'd love to be a business owner, Lord willing, I want the conversations to be different. I want it to be from an abundance standpoint, not scarcity. So I do think that underpinned a lot of decisions I made in my career. But no, I really stumbled into franchising. So I can't attribute that to the childhood. Had spent many years in the corporate world, like many of your listeners, and had a great run. Really appreciate everything that I was given the responsibility and opportunity to take on. But I had a desire to build my own empire, to get out there instead of building someone else's. I'd been grinding and I wanted to get after it, but I didn't know what it looked like. And through some circumstances and events and introductions, had the opportunity to step in as president of ShelfGenie franchise system and support all of our owners across North America. And for me, that was the light bulb moment for, where franchising made sense. I saw all these diverse backgrounds now operating a shared system, allowing people to become business owners, oftentimes for the first time. In some cases, they were, they had a few other businesses. So that was really the pivotal moment. Spun off from there, invested in franchises myself with other partners, and started the consulting side about 6-7 years ago because I'm passionate about helping others do the same.
There's a good, bad, and ugly to being an entrepreneur, I know, and one of the uglies is that we kind of like to beat to our own drum, and I feel like some resistance that you may get from entrepreneurs is that, well, franchise, that's a great idea, but I really can't, I can't color outside the lines. Can you talk to the entrepreneurs that may be in our community that may feel a little bit constricted by the idea of a franchise, but share the benefit of it as well?
Yeah, I'm a member of the Entrepreneurs Organization and other mastermind groups and encounter a lot of other business owners, and they approach me. And there are some that I have to say, hey, you're too entrepreneurial. You want to put your thumbprints all over it. You think you're the smartest guy in the room, no matter what room you're in. But for the vast majority, I would say franchising can make a lot of sense because what they tell me is, John, I remember all the hard work that went into launching my first business and all the testing, all the mistakes I made.
Right.
If I could have all that kind of blueprinted already and just go execute and start on third base, I love that idea. So a lot of them actually appreciate franchising all the more. And any good franchisor is going to let you color outside the lines a little bit. You're going to be able to innovate and try new things. That's where the best ideas come from that spur the systems. But franchising for so many of them, here you've got product market fit that's been established in other markets. You've got the playbook, you've got a coach on the sidelines supporting you and their team. But here's one of the things that oftentimes gets overlooked. You've got a community of other owners all operating the same system. Think about when you built your first business, it was lonely at times. And now you've got a community of others running the same thing, exchanging best practices. And, and I'll say it up front here, franchising is like every other industry in that you have really strong players, and then you have some that are not as strong, that don't provide the value to the franchisees. And that's where we come in to try to help our clients identify the right ones.
One of the things I love about franchising, I'll tell you just a really quick story about me and my son. I have two kids, and my son is the one that's probably less entrepreneurial in thought and practice. But it doesn't have to be the sexy, glamorous businesses. As a matter of fact, you probably don't want the sexy, glamorous businesses. As we're walking down the boardwalk in Ocean City, New Jersey, where we oftentimes vacationed, we'd walk around go to the parking lot, and I would point out to my son, you see every one of those loading docks, they all have an overhead door. Those overhead doors need to be sold. They need to be serviced. They need to be maintained. There's got to be preventive maintenance. That's the kind of business that technology won't necessarily affect. Those are the kinds of businesses that you probably want to think about. If you're going to get into business on your own, do it through a company like Overhead Doors that probably has a franchise of theirs. What's your thought about the idea? Sorry, it's a long way to go around my asshole to get to my butt, but it's like, what maybe thoughts could you share about glamorous, sexy versus, hey, we want tried and true and something that we know the economy is not going to put in the crapper if something happens with politics, for example. Perfect timing.
Well, I'm a little contrarian. When people say the word franchise, they use the F word. People usually think food, right? I mean, that's what comes to mind. But half of the industry is in industries outside of food. And oftentimes these can be non-sexy. I joke that non-sexy is the new sexy. And so we don't work in food very often. We really focus on all these other industries. And people come to us and say, hey, we're not looking for the latest trend. We want understandable cash flowing businesses, things that aren't going to be disrupted by AI. Maybe AI can benefit them, but they're not going to disrupt them. Amazon's not going to go replicate what we're doing, understandable cash flowing businesses. And so oftentimes we're introducing them to opportunities in things like home and property services, health and wellness, categories like kids, pets, seniors, things that people care about, that they're going to spend money on regardless, that aren't going out of style. And again, I've got nothing against the food guys. We need them. We support them.
Right.
But my humble belief is there are easier ways to make money that may require less capital, fewer employees, less operating hours, that may carry higher margins, that may be less susceptible to consumer whims. We're talking about trendy. Frozen yogurt was big until it wasn't, right? The whole froyo craze. And so
right.
Customer whims can change, but you're always going to need dumpsters. You're always going to need asphalt paving and line striping in parking lots, which is one of the franchises I own. You're always going to need, businesses around health and wellness, youth soccer, in-home senior care. I mean, think about the macro picture and where people spend money. And there's so many niches that support those.
I love the I was a live event entertainer, and my slogan was DJ Doug, nerd is the new sexy. And it's totally right. Not sexy is the new sexy. Talk to the entrepreneurs that are in our community, and I've heard from many of them as it relates to starting their own business and getting into bootstrapping their business because you don't have a big bank supporting you or investors or high tech or anything like that. Talk to those that say, hey, I would think about doing a franchise, but I don't have the money to put down 50 or 100 or 250 or $1 million in some of these franchises that have a huge winning track record. Can you share just what your input is on that?
Yeah, we have clients that will get into seven-figure deals here and there, but a lot of our clients, when you look at the franchise fee and the startup costs and several months of working capital, you're all in investment range. And oftentimes you're between 150,000 and 300,000. That's where a lot of things fall, and quite a few on both sides of that. But it's not always straight cash. Some people use cash. A lot of people will put in, 50,000 in cash. I'd say if you don't have 50,000 in cash, that may be a benchmark to kind of target. But they'll put that in, still have a little bit of working capital on the sidelines. But banks love franchises. Again, nothing's a given, nothing's a sure thing, but there's such a predictability to franchises that banks love lending to them. So, we work with banks that send out loans all day, every day to our clients. And so SBA loans are very, very common, where maybe that covers 75, 80% of the expense of the franchise. Another common approach is using a 401k from a previous employer, rolling that over through what's called the ROBS program, ROBS. Some use that in conjunction with the SBA to provide the capital. So some will use HELOCs, a lot of different ways to get involved. But the good thing is, again, that the lending institutions, the banks, like franchises.
All right, John. So I'll throw another point at you, and I appreciate you responded with that about the dollars and cents, because I know that is a sticking point for some people. But there's always an opportunity to get started with one, even if that 50 grand mark is not something that you have. You just need to start the conversation. Don't just turn your head, nice guy community. If you say, "Well, he just said 50,000, I don't have that, so that excludes me." Don't think of that as the exclusion factor. Think of that as the opportunity to at least have an active conversation with John about it. And we'll make sure you get all of his contact information before we end this episode. Talk to those that live in a small community. You and I, before I hit record, I said I live in Ojai, California, and you said you'd visited here, which is kind of cool because it is a very small town between two larger towns like Los Angeles and Santa Barbara. Small town of 5,000 people, maybe in my mind, not a lot of opportunity here because there's not a lot of people here. What do you say to those that live in small towns that don't want to have to venture outside to a bigger town, a half hour, 45 minutes, an hour away, that are thinking about starting a franchise? How does that work in your brain?
Yeah, I'd say, well, if you want to make money and have a successful business, we probably need to tap into a larger population. So, most businesses, everyone has different requirements around what's needed from an addressable market. But in a case like Ojai, you probably would need to carve out a larger territory that includes Ojai and maybe one of those two cities. So, we want to make sure, and the franchisor wants to set you up for success, and they've got all the demographic information at the zip code level that they can pull up. And of course, you can always do some secret shopping and stuff too. But yeah, we want to make sure that you're set up for success. So I'd say, oftentimes you're looking for a population of maybe at a minimum 150,000, 200,000. And there are some businesses where maybe you need a larger market, because I think of a client in Texas right now that's looking at a special needs franchise, special needs in-home care for kids with disabilities. Well, that's a smaller percentage of the population, so you need a larger population base.
Right.
There's another one, aircraft detailing. Again, you've got to have a population base that has enough private aircraft to support the business. So, the franchisor is going to make sure you're set up for success. But I'd say if you're in a small town, think about what contiguous areas you could pull into a territory, if you will. And, where I'm going with this is more of a service-based business that's out in the field where you're, running routes, again, in-home senior care, a lot of these home and property services. If it is a retail location, again, you just want to make sure that within that 3-mile radius, 6-mile radius, you've got the population base to support it.
Let's head down the path of on the business as opposed to in the business. Is the expectation that somebody is starting a franchise because they're going to actually work in the business, or is that maybe a starting point until you get the opportunity to hire a team and work on the business instead? What are your thoughts about that?
Roughly half of our clients are looking to jump in and run the business day one. Most of them have the mindset that one day they will extract themselves in a bigger way and replace themselves, in the business. The other half of our clients are looking to run what's called an executive model, or semi-passive, semi-absentee. I like to call it semi-involved because I won't sugarcoat it. There's still a lot of work involved.
Oh
And
yeah.
really, the success of that model comes down to having a good operator. I mean, the nice thing is if you have a good operator, you've got a good franchisor on the sideline supporting them, that franchisor can carry a lot of the daily support water, taking some of that burden off of you. So franchising makes it doable to have a business without being in the business on a daily basis. And again, a lot of those clients, some say, hey, we'll eventually jump into the business once it's cash flowing at a certain level. Some say, hey, we'll just use that as a stepping stone and continue to build this portfolio. A lot of our clients, whatever you do next isn't going to be the only thing you do in a lot of cases. You're working towards this portfolio of businesses that complement or diversify from each other. Some people will get in. I think of a client of mine that's the largest franchisee of 2 minute truck moving service. He got in, had 1 or 2 locations and started acquiring other franchisees, and it's now up to 12 locations. That's very common, that internal M&A where you're acquiring other franchisees to build a larger kingdom as well.
Yeah, that is great. I'd love to know more about the success path for putting a franchise together. Banks are going to look at this more favorably. You're going to have better results if you're using a built-in, tried and true system. We think about the number of franchises that are in our small town, and very few businesses are franchises because the town doesn't allow storefronts to be franchises. You couldn't open up a McDonald's, for example, in the middle of Ojai, or you couldn't open up a Dunkin' Donuts. And I get very sad when I know that you can't open up a Dunkin' Donuts because I love them so much. However, I understand that, but there is the part of it, the success rate of a franchise is much higher than just opening up your own business. So can you speak on that for a moment?
Yeah, and again, it's not a sure thing. There's risk involved with anything, but you're able to take a much more calculated risk. Through the exploration process that we help our clients with. You're evaluating different models, different businesses, but you get to talk to other franchisees in their system before you ever buy. Hear about their experience, ask them questions. You get all sorts of information. You get the FDD, the franchise disclosure document. It's a wealth of all the historical information as well as some past financial results. So you're at least able to go in, making an educated decision. And then again, once you're in the system and you've got that franchisor and their team supporting you on the sideline, I mean, candidly, the better you do, the better they do. And so, they're incentivized to make you successful. Other franchisees are incentivized for you to be successful. It helps the brand overall. So you've got a lot of people on your team supporting you, helping you, cheering for you, which again, if you've started a business on your own, you probably didn't have that, at least not to the same degree. So
no, it's got the school of hard knocks. It's the only thing you have
yeah.
on your side when it comes to starting your own business, especially if you're bootstrapping it. I want to take a right turn for a moment. I want to talk to my community just for a quick second, because Nice Guy Community, we've been talking to Jon just about the experience of owning a franchise and the value of owning a franchise and the benefits of putting a franchise together, but we really don't understand Jon's business model yet. So, Jon, if it's okay with you, if we take this right turn just to switch gears for just a second, I want to leave the fact that we all know at this point, based upon what you're saying and our own experience, building a franchise is better than building it on your own. There's obviously a system that's in place. Yes, there's an upfront cost. There's less risk that's involved. There's more opportunity. You have the community, all of the things, the components that you mentioned. But let's talk about your business model, which I think is really cool, because what you're doing, and I'll let you explain it more in detail because I'm sure I'm going to mess it up, but what you're doing is you're providing a service, but the service is not paid for by the person that's looking to buy the franchise. You're talking to your client is the franchisor who is selling the franchise, and you're working to build the relationship between the two of them. Is that right? And if that's wrong, tell me and let me know how that whole model is put together.
Yeah, I'm essentially a middleman. So you can think of me as a real estate broker, but for franchises. And so at the end of the day, we simply get a referral fee from the franchise brand when a placement happens. None of that's passed on to our clients. It's just a sales and marketing cost for them. I think of my clients as those individuals that I work with, even though I get paid ultimately by the brand.
Right.
For me, I get my validation when people come back and buy additional brands, additional locations, additional, they refer their brother to me. So I'm invested heavily in their long-term success and helping them find the right franchise. And really, there's no bias. I mean, we get the same referral fee pretty much across the board from those brands. So entirely free to work with us. We I'll get on a call with someone, that has an interest, get to know them, have them fill out some information, and then I'll come back and introduce them to what I see as the top opportunities available for them in the market. Available meaning they're not already sold out. That's the
Right,
key thing.
right.
But I'll introduce them to maybe 10 opportunities across different price points, different industries, and their goal is to narrow it down to maybe 3 or 4 to have a conversation with, and then we can always pivot from there. But it gives us a really good starting point, and then I hold their hand through the process as they're going through these discovery calls with the franchises, talking to other franchisees in the system, getting a whole lot of information. I'm helping them process it. I'm bringing funding resources for them. I've got a franchise attorney to review the agreement. We've got recruiters, kind of a one-stop shop to help people navigate all the noise out there, because there's a lot of noise out there. If you stumble upon a top 100 franchise list, most of those companies have actually paid to be on the list. It's just a PR move. There's
No
so
doubt.
much noise, and where we've got the relationships, we know these franchisors, we see behind the curtains. We're really able to add a lot of value, again, for no charge at all.
So I liken it to, yes, you could probably, those that are out in our Nice Guy community, Strickland and I have talked about this ad nauseum. You could probably start a podcast on your very own. You just go to Google and say, Google, teach me, or Chat GPT, how do I launch a podcast? And up will pop the 27 easy steps to launch your own podcast, which any one of them could throw you off. It seems like it would not make sense to go at buying a franchise without someone in your corner. Why would anybody do that, John?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question. And, you're not going to go buy a home, without a real estate agent typically. And, and I just help navigate, because there's a lot of noise, there's a lot of confusion, and not every company is created equal. There's some that are better capitalized than others. That's something that wouldn't cross your mind. But how well capitalized is the franchisor? What does that leadership team look like? It's not just about what features do they offer and competitive advantages, what do the financials look like, but it's that leadership team. If it's a newer brand and they've got great industry experience, well, that's lovely. But I want to make sure they've got franchise experience on that team too. People that have been there, done that, supported successful franchisees in the past elsewhere. So, there's a little bit of science, a little bit of art. Our biggest challenge is that good opportunities move incredibly fast in good markets. That's where, again, we're coming in, trying to leverage our relationships with the franchisors so I can get my clients bumped in front of other candidates in the pipeline for those opportunities in those markets.
Well, let's talk about how someone engages your services, at least from a beginning point, a starting point. I know you have FranBridgeConsulting.com, Nice Guy Community. We'll make sure we put a link in the show notes for that. But what can somebody expect if they go to your website, just to kind of peruse around, try to figure out a little bit more about you before committing to the phone call, which is free anyway, but committing to the phone call is obviously a big commitment for somebody to jump through that hoop. So tell me what they experience when they get to your website.
Yeah, come out to our website, FranBridgeConsulting.com, FranBridgeConsulting.com. I've got a lot of content out there, a lot of podcasts, some articles. But download a free copy of our book, Non-Food Franchising. I really tried to pack a lot of content into 90 pages. Most of our clients have read it by the time they get on a call with us, and just helps fill in the gaps in understanding and in your franchise knowledge, helps get the juices flowing. I talk about franchising versus buying an existing business, franchising versus a startup, franchising, how the legal side of it works with the FDD, how the funding works. I give case studies. We talk about different industries. So again, packed a lot of content into a very easy read, or you can download the audiobook as another option. But that'd be a great starting point to get your toe in the water. And then like if you'd like to set up a call, my assistant reaches out to everyone that shares their email address, and she can send a calendar link, and we can set up a conversation. And it's what I do every day, and absolutely passionate about it.
So there's probably a ton of things that I'm not asking you that maybe a more seasoned host with podcasting, I mean, with franchising may. I don't think anybody's more seasoned with podcasting. That's crazy. 1,600 freaking episodes. I don't know what I don't know. So tell me a little bit more about how, what my community would want to know before they take a dive into either looking for more information or figuring out what they want.
Yeah, I think a lot of people come to us and say, hey, what kind of money can I make? What does that look like? We talked about the funding side. And for me, I'm an all of the above kind of guy. I believe in real estate investing. I personally invest in quite a few different asset classes. It is interesting right now. We're seeing more and more real estate investors coming over to franchising because you've got lack of inventory, high interest rates, like the deals aren't penciling out. So they're saying, what's another tax advantaged opportunity to invest? And they're coming over to franchising. There's a lot of tangential type businesses, some of those home and property services that go directly, like property management. We work worked with a couple of property management companies. They're like, hey, I'm already paying someone. Why don't I just do it? And then I can provide the service to others. But it is eye-opening to people when they realize what you can make from a return standpoint. Now, why is that? Because, hey, if it was easy, everyone would be a business owner. But instead, it does take a little more effort than investing passively in a syndication or in a stock index. It takes more effort, but the returns can be greatly outsized. Plus, you're building an asset that you're going to be able to sell one day, potentially to another franchisee in the system. That's very common. And it's also tax advantage. So you have a W-2 income today, and you're able to get a business going on the side. Gosh, I mean, the government incentivizes tax, business ownership with their taxes policies. So there's so many things that just opens up this playbook from a tax standpoint. So I call it the trifecta: the cash flows, the asset value, and then the tax benefit side. So, the returns are across the board. Oftentimes you're looking in maybe the 15 to 25% bottom line returns, but that's 15, 25% bottom line margins.
Right.
But that can translate to 40, 50, 60% returns on your initial investment. Again, because you're putting a little effort into the business, right? It's not just passive. So, yeah, and we get into the financials on any particular detail with opportunity with our clients.
So with the proliferation of technology nowadays, ChatGPT, AI, of course, social media, people working remotely has become this huge opportunity for somebody to actually make money without having to leave their home. Are there franchise opportunities in the remote space? I know we talked a little bit about home services and non-food franchises, but is there anything that someone could do from their home that would be considered a franchise and that you're involved in?
100%. I'd say over half of our clients are getting into that. And it's everything from business coaching. And I mean, your father started the sales training, franchise. There's some consulting related ones. Again, in-home senior care, youth soccer, which I mentioned, dog training, pet grooming, and some of the pet grooming have retail, but there are some remote ones. All these home and property services, think cabinets, flooring, roofing, the ones I mentioned, the asphalt paving, line striping, painting. So many different niches within all these umbrellas. There's a roofing company I'm starting to work with that it has like a liquid gel that can literally extend the life of a roof by 100%, literally double the life of the roof. There's so many different niches out there that people would never think about. We have a lot of clients get into like restoration. Working with the insurance companies on water mitigation, mold remediation, non-sexy stuff, dumpsters, and a lot of these don't require a customer-facing retail build-out.
Right
now. There are some sexier ones in the health and wellness space and others that do require the retail. But yeah, quite a few where you can work remotely, and people do love that. They like being their own boss, having that freedom, not being tied down to a physical location, and not having to say boss anymore.
And then finally, our population is getting older. Is franchiseeing, I don't know the proper lingo for it, is owning a franchise something that is attractive to an older population?
It is. So I've literally done deals this year with everyone from their 20s to their 60s. I'd say quite a few people in their 30s to 50s. That's probably the sweet spot. But no, we definitely have clients that say, hey, I'm not about to go interview. Again, I've got a little too much gray in my hair, but I'm not done yet. I still have energy. I still have fire in the belly. I want to go try my hand at something, and I want to be able to maybe pass a business on to my kids. I see that all the time. Or they want to set an example for their kids, or they want to invest alongside their daughter, and they'll both have different roles in the business. I mean, it really is neat. But yeah, quite a few in that last inning of their career saying, hey, I'm not done yet. I've got to keep the middle juices flowing and kind of challenge myself and build some residual income.
Great information, Jon. And for those in the community that are interested in finding out more, definitely head over to FranBridgeConsulting.com. We'll make sure we put a link in the show notes for that. You'll have access to Jon's 90-page book. You'll have access to, in the show notes, I listened to the thing that really got me going with with not only your subject matter, but you as a person, was many of the answers that you gave on a podcast called Travis Makes Money Podcast. I'll put a plug in for Travis that hosts that show. But man, you talked about finance, you talked about growing up and money, you talked about your relationship to money, you talked about just everything the things that really do shape you as not only a business person, but shape you as a person in the world. And nice guy community, Jon is the kind of guy that you want at your back. He's the one that you want, that if you have a question, he's passionate about it. He's not just doing it. I'm sure there's dollars and cents that's involved. Yes, he's getting paid to do the job. But there's some passion that's involved in this too. And that's easy to see in many of the episodes and much of the content that you're creating. So hats off to you, Jon, for doing that. And thanks for being here on the show today.
Thanks so much for having me. And I appreciate the kind words. Very kind.
Nice guy community. Never underestimate the power of a nice. Again, special thanks to Jon. All of his information, including access to his website, will be right there in the show notes. Steve O'Brien, go ahead and take us out of here.
For the Nice Guys on Business, I'm Steve O'Brien. Fill up your week with the nice guys. Well, there's always money in the banana stand.